Last Sunday, Spain won the World Cup. I watched the match in a Chinese-owned bar near my house. There were about a dozen people from the barrio sitting and watching the big screen, drinking beer and eating fried rice. A guy who looked suspiciously like Joaquin Phoenix from The Joker with his Asian wife. A bald Italian guy with his wife. A guy with Jesus and Tupac tattoos wearing something that looked like pajamas. And a few elderly Catalans. The Spanish and Argentinian teams kicked the ball up and down for a while. Spain was doing most of the kicking. I took another swig of my alcohol-free beer. Sobriety makes it clear just how slow football is. My wife Morena showed up 25 minutes into the match and ordered some fried noodles. She took a few bites and looked disgusted. After the halftime show, Shakira, Justin Bieber, the Muppets, BTS, etc., she went home and got in bed. I hung in there even when the match went to overtime. Now that I'm Spanish, I can't walk out on the World Cup final, even if it's a 0-0 tie after 90 minutes. But my sense of boredom was stretched to its absolute limit as Argentina spent most of the match without even trying to score a goal. Well into the overtime period, Ferran Torres of Spain scored, and that made the Argentinian team a bit more energetic. It was quite tense for a bit. Finally, it ended. Spain 1, Argentina 0. Campeones por segunda vez. Out on the street at midnight, people were honking their horns, lighting off firecrackers, and waving Spanish flags out their windows. Ole! Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. This is episode 150, and it's all about summer in Barcelona. I've got two shout-outs today. One is for JR. JR is a multi-donor out in Texas. He has been supporting the podcast left and right these days. And he said he would send along some diaper money for the baby that Morena and I are expecting in November. He also wanted to get on board with episode 150 because it's a big milestone. I decided to talk about the World Cup because that's the sort of milestone that people will definitely remember 20 years from now. And because in summer there's not much going on that is very newsworthy. So World Cup it is. Anyway, JR says, congrats on the baby. He made a donation so that we could buy something from Uncle JR. Thank you very much. If you would like to donate to the podcast, please go to expatmadrid.com/donate. expatmadrid.com/donate is the donation page. You can send any amount of money from 10 euros on up. It all helps me to produce this podcast and to keep making episodes. So thank you very much. Second shout out today to Randy. Randy says, as the father of 3 daughters who are the blend of my Midwest USA whiteness and my wife's Hispanic, Mexican, and Spanish fire, I smile to myself, knowing the many joys that you are about to experience as a soon-to-be girl dad. I wish you and Morena all the best. Thank you, Randy. I have a feeling I talked to Randy on some platform at some point, but I can't find it right now. In any case, thank you, Randy, for your donation. I am indeed a soon-to-be girl dad. Once again, if you would like to support the podcast, go to expatmadrid.com/donate. expatmadrid.com/donate. Just pick an amount there. You can send me a message along with your donation, and I will give you a shout out in a future episode. Thanks again to Randy, JR, and all donors past, present, and future. Let's get back to summer in Barcelona. You would think that people would be happy about the World Cup victory, but that is not always the case. Today, El Español news site reports that a mural on the streets of Barcelona depicting Ferran Torres, that's the player who scored the goal in the final, lasted less than 24 hours before being painted over by Catalan independence activists. The Indepe slogan, Puta España, is one I have seen in several places around Catalonia. They spell España the Catalan way with an NY instead of an Ñ. Also, an obscure left-wing politician spent the week sharing fake news suggesting that Torres owns a vulture fund that speculates with Spanish housing. It's not true, but I guess all is fair in love and party politics. So the positive national feeling lasted a day or two after the World Cup victory, and now a loud minority of Catalans have gone back to hating Spain. Not me, though. I love this country. Unrelated note, the artist who did the Ferran Torres mural is TV Boy, an Italian from Palermo who is also responsible for the woke Sant Jordi campaign from this year's Sant Jordi holiday here in Barcelona. You know, the one where instead of slaying the dragon, St. George is kissing the dragon, entirely missing the point of the whole story. I talk more about that in episode 137 of this podcast, if you would like to hear about that. So with the World Cup over, now it's just summer. And summer is a bit of an odd time in Barcelona. It's high season for tourism, which means a lot of things stay open, but neighborhood businesses and things that don't depend on tourist money tend to close. My fish lady takes 5 weeks off every summer. The Buddhist center where I hang out a couple of afternoons per week is closed all August. And my gym stops the formal jiu-jitsu classes. If I want, I can lift weights or get sweaty with other men on the open mat. Meanwhile, it's hot and humid and the whole city smells like piss. But at least we're out of that drought. There's plenty of water in the reservoirs and we don't need rain urgently. Still, it would be nice to get a good storm in here to wash the urine off the sidewalks. Summer mornings, I usually drop Morena off at work, which is a 25-minute walk from our house. I like to get out of the house early, but it really depends on what you mean by early, because Morena leaves the house at about 9 a.m. By that time, I've usually been awake for 3 hours. Today, with the sun rising outside, I crack open a new book, The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I picked this one up because I heard it was a good book about fatherhood. But I'm 50 pages in, and it looks like it's all about a father and son pushing a shopping cart down abandoned highways in a post-apocalyptic American wasteland. In other words, it's depressing. And knowing a bit about McCarthy, I'm not expecting a huge uplifting turn where everybody lives happily ever after. So if you have any favorite books about fatherhood, please let me know, especially if they're more optimistic than apocalyptic. My first child is due in 4 months. I drop Morena next to her office, then walk back through Poblano. Near the big design museum at Glorias, a giant rat runs out in front of my shoe, then jumps into the bushes. The pissy smell is almost unbearable. I stop at Buenas Migas for a coffee. The Tai Chi people are out doing their thing in front of one of the big glass buildings. Next to them, 2 guys are practicing some sort of TikTok dance. They don't look like your average TikTok kids. In fact, they're close to my age. But in a few hours, this area will fill up with groups of outlandishly dressed nerds dancing for the algorithm. At the big Carrefour, I buy some steak and some chicken breasts. I've promised Morena I'll make my famous butter chicken tonight. Then I head home to record English videos. That's my own nerdy version of dancing for the algorithm. I have a bit of a confession to make. I am a skeptic about summer. Maybe I've never really liked summer. Growing up in Arizona, it was extremely hot for several months a year. Also, we lived in the middle of the desert, and there was nothing to do in summer but sit at home. My parents would leave a list of chores every morning to keep me and my sister busy. I resented the list of chores for years, but I guess the message was that life isn't free and that everyone has to be useful, to earn their keep in some way. So now I'm grateful for that lesson, but I still hate doing housework. Later, when I moved to Madrid, I spent 10 years working under the table as an English teacher. I had summers off, and I was in Europe. That was quite an improvement over summer in the Arizona desert, but it was complicated by the fact that I didn't earn any money from July 1st through late September. My flatmates at the time were terrified of running the air conditioning because Europe, so I would take long walks around town or sit at home reading. Finances were always a problem. I couldn't get my students to stick around for private lessons and didn't want to work for summer camps. So the role of 20s and 50s in my secret money sock would slowly dwindle as the season went on. Then everything would close and my friends would go out of town. Broke, bored, and lonely, I would count the days till August's end. Later, I had a girlfriend who wanted to go to the beach in summer. So we would pool our meager funds and try to get to Galicia or somewhere like that. I find sitting on a towel to be interesting for about 5 minutes. My girlfriend expected to be at the beach all day. I would walk up and down in the sand to her immense frustration and do push-ups. Many, many push-ups. I guess I've always been at war with the bourgeois concept of time. In 2015, I quit my day job to focus on online business. I thought that having the structure of going to work Monday to Friday was a problem I could plan my way out of, and thus outsmart the system. Instead, I ended up working 7 days a week. I would work at home and work while traveling. YouTube and Instagram make it possible to turn any moment of your life into content creation, dancing for the algorithm again. And I suppose I'm not the only writer who spends all his free time writing or thinking about writing, or mentally composing sentences and paragraphs. For example, I wrote the first section of this article in my head yesterday afternoon at the Buddhist Center. I got so involved in it, I barely listened to the meditation. So these days, I'm trying to recreate a rhythm for myself where I take time off from writing and also from being online. Half my life, I was rebelling against the 9 to 5, but structure wasn't actually the enemy. This summer, Morena and I have a few plans. First, her company is sending us to Canada. Morena sold a whole lot of expensive software last year, and as a reward, they send us somewhere for a few days. The locations always end up being places we wouldn't otherwise go, but it's free. So, depending on how the pregnancy progresses, we may be out in British Columbia for a few days in August. After that, Raul from Bike Tour in Spain is sending me on another adventure. This time it's La Rioja and El Camino del Cid. You can check that out at biketourinspain.com. Be sure to use that exact web address, biketourinspain.com. There are many imitators, but nothing as good as Raul's company, biketourinspain.com. Anyway, the bike tour of La Rioja and Camino del Cid is the first week of September. I'll have a full report about that sometime this fall. The route starts in Bilbao up in Basque country and ends in the medieval city of Sigüenza, Guadalajara. There are a couple of transfers by van in there, so I'm not riding the whole way. But it's a 7-day cardio holiday, nonetheless. In the meantime, you could check out my podcast episode from a previous bike tour that Raul sent me on, this one across the Wild West region of Extremadura. Extremadura is episode 94. There's also a series of videos about it on my YouTube channel, Learn Spanish with Daniel, if you would like to check that out. Really nice scenery. You cross the mountains and you visit some really incredible towns. The Extremadura bike tour was one of the best Spain experiences I have had in over 20 years living here. I'm not joking or exaggerating, so check out biketourinspain.com and tell Raul that I sent you. He will appreciate the business. Finally, to wrap up, it's terraza season here in Spain. According to all the surveys, Spanish people's favorite leisure time activity in summer is to sit on a terraza and drink beer. That's something I'm not doing anymore. I'm done with booze and mostly avoiding carbs like alcohol-free beer as well, unless there's a World Cup final to watch. So 3/4 of normal social events are just impossible these days. It's weird how much of people's lives revolve around alcohol and carbs. Now that I'm not doing either, I feel a bit left out. Also, despite living in a city with several large beaches, I don't spend a lot of time out on a towel contemplating the Mediterranean. If you had my skin color, you would understand. Back at home, in the Barrio de Clot, I sear the meat for the butter chicken, then put some onions in the pan to brown. Summer may be a bit boring, but I can go to the gym, read books, and sit under the AC all afternoon. It's a quiet life, and I guess I like it that way. A few hours later, Morena is home from the office. We sit down to eat dinner. My butter chicken is mind-blowing, tangy, creamy, and spicy. We eat like medieval kings. Soon we'll be parents. And Spain is the World Cup champion. Life is good. That's about all I've got for today. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are in the world. Quick note here, El Camino del Cid refers to a figure from La Reconquista called Rodrigo Díaz y Bibar. He was a sort of warlord who created quite a reputation for himself fighting against the Muslims back in the 11th century. The Iberian Crusades are Spain's national founding myth, and I talked a lot more about it in the article and podcast on Spanish ham and the culture wars. That one is episode 131 if you would like to have a listen. It's all about the politics of pork, and it's got a football tie-in as well. Now that Spain's star player Lamine Yamal is of African origin, there's a bit of a controversy about where he fits into Spanish society. Anyway, that is episode 131. Check it out. Thanks, as always, to Raul over at biketourinspain.com for sending me on these exciting adventures. If you would like to sign up for a 7 to 10 day cardio holiday, head over to biketourinspain.com and look at what he has. I've done the route of Don Quixote and also the Extremadura bike tour. Extremadura is out in Spain's Wild West. It was incredible. The route of Don Quixote is also good. And La Rioja, which I will be doing soon, is actually one of the few parts of Spain that I haven't visited. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, go to biketourinspain.com to sign up for a tour. Tell Raul that Daniel from the Spain to Go podcast sent you. He will appreciate it. You could also go to my YouTube channel, Learn Spanish with Daniel, and watch a few of my Spanish learning videos. I haven't made one in a couple of weeks here. I've been making extra episodes of the podcast, but I'll get back to that soon. I think I have about 100 videos teaching various aspects of the Spanish language. It's not really absolute beginner Spanish. I'm sure you can find absolute beginner stuff somewhere else. My videos are for people who know a little bit already and who might be curious also about Spanish culture, because there's always a cultural element to these language lessons. So just put Learn Spanish with Daniel into your YouTube search box and you will find me. And one more time, you can donate to the podcast at expatmadrid.com/donate. Send however much you want. It all helps to make more episodes of this podcast, and I will appreciate it forever, and I will give you a shout out on a future episode. Thank you to all donors past, present, and future. JR and Randy are the ones this week. And that's about all I've got for today. Enjoy your summer, stay cool, and we'll talk soon. Hasta la próxima. Bye.